We want to work on the super hard problems without getting the basics done, And I think that's just human nature in a real weird way. We don't want to clean up our room, but we're willing to say what the president's doing is wrong. It's like we don't want to look at our own stuff, right? We don't want to look at that bank account because we just know it's not good. Regardless of what you want to do, whether you want to sell, scale, or pivot, if you can't answer where you're supposed to be in a year, if you can't answer whether or not your dispatcher is doing a good job based on a certain amount of metrics, if you can't answer what your utilization is based on kind of your payroll and what your billable hours are, like you have no business trying to figure out, should I pivot? Should I sell? Should I scale? Like you just don't have any business because you're going to have to answer those. And in all three of those situations, it's like you don't just get to choose to scale or pivot. And you definitely don't get to choose to sell because someone's going to ask you those questions.
Welcome back to another episode of the BMK Vision podcast. Gary, it's a Saturday morning. This is not normal for us. I don't know how to feel about this.
Yeah, it feels different for sure.
Yeah. I'm used to, having meetings before and after and feeling kind of rushed and pressured. It's kind of nice to just kind of be able to ease into the day here. But I did actually have a client call today. And, as we kind of go through, I knew what I wanted today's topic to be, but it just kind of anchored in, based on that call. And today's episode is not very theoretical. Okay? We're really talking about two MSP owners, one on the West Coast of the US, one in a foreign country. One's around 3 million, one's around 10 million. And they're both asking the same question. And it boils down to, should I sell now or am I leaving money on the table or am I leaving money on the table now or am I leaving money on the table later? And underneath, there's this kind of bigger concern. When they think about AI, automation, private equity roll-ups, are we heading toward a point where MSPs start getting repriced or even pushed out? So today, what I was hoping we'd do is we kind of break this down into those four options: sell, scale, pivot, or get rolled up. Right. But before we even get there, I think the uncomfortable question that these two folks, I think they're starting to ask it a little bit, but it's, do you actually understand your own business well enough to make that decision? As if you don't know your numbers, if you don't know your data, you don't have a clear plan, then whatever answer you come to is not this strategic conclusion. It's just reacting. Does that make sense, what I'm saying there?
Yeah, definitely. I think when we talk to these businesses, especially early on, um, they've heard about a lot of these strategies. They've got desire to grow, potentially even exit. And the first step in our engagement is setting up that at least 1 year plan, if not multi-year. And I would say, what would you say? The majority have never done this before at this point. So you know it's interesting, to find that out. I don't think I'm not floored by it, being a business owner myself, and how hard it is to pause and plan and execute on a plan. But, yeah, I think, having these, ideas around how we scale, how we grow, how we exit, and then reflecting back on, do I even know my business? I think the answer we can definitively say is, in our experience, no, we don't know our business.
And I think that it often comes down to that when you're trying to make some of these decisions or reacting to some external pressures. And if I said, the external pressures as I see them right now is like AI is increasing efficiency, automation tools continue to develop, PE continues to consolidate, some large MSPs are forming, good or bad. uh, Cybersecurity is getting even, more important than ever. So How real do you think those pressures actually are? Are these overblown? Are they legitimate? What is your take on that?
Yeah, they're real, they're legitimate, and they're not new. Um, you know, there was a time that there was no cloud, and MSPs thought the way that you did service was go on site and work on people's computers and networks and servers, and that's what it was. And then the cloud came out, and I can't tell you how many of my peers said, "Oh my god, we're totally screwed here. Google's gonna take all of our jobs." Fast forward 10 years, it had little to no impact. If anything, it just made their job easier. So the way I see technology entering in the space that most MSPs live in, it's just a another thing to deal with. But I don't think that it's something that uh, is going to make the MSP go away. That's my personal take on it.
Okay, great. So if I said, the threat isn't that the MSP goes away, that the real threat is that the average MSP gets exposed, right? That maybe you're really generic, maybe you're really labor heavy, maybe most commonly, it's a very owner dependent MSP. So if the question is not, do MSP goes away, but what does it look like to be exposed? Do you agree that this is a little more about quality than size of MSP?
Yeah,
And
it
you don't have
can
to
be.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it can be. When you look at like technology adoption, over time, it generally follows that S curve. And that early adopter phase, is really a small percentage of the population. And it's even
Hang tight on
smaller.
that for real quick. I hear this S curve. Is that S like this or S like this? Like I'm stupid with this stuff. Break the S curve down for me.
Yeah, so it's just, it's essentially breaks it down to kind of that early adopter, most of the time what you're considering is like kind of the early adoption, kind of the midway through the S on, kind of um headed towards mass adoption, and then ultimately, it's fully implemented. So we see this with various technologies, like cloud would be a great one. It took a long time. I think we were just talking to a client the other day, and they were going on site to do like a server upgrade. In 2026, it's like, why would you have a server on site? It just doesn't really make any more sense, anymore, but there's just kind of that, that late stage adoption cycle that, maybe it's the technology that they're using, maybe it's the security practices that they're still implementing, maybe it's just the fact that the company doesn't wanna adopt anything new, so I think what we find is with any technology and any adoption of it, um, it's just very slow. So the hype cycle of like, "Hey, look at all this great stuff that can modify, change, or improve my business," um, it just doesn't happen at the timescales that it looked like it would happen. I think we always get tricked into that. So I think from the AI standpoint, um I think we're witnessing that where, if you're heavily involved with AI, and I would claim to be part of kind of that early adopter. We're implementing it in workflows. We're developing software with AI. We're developing software literally using AI to write the code. Um, you know, w- I think that everyone should be using it. It feels like everyone is using it, but then when I poke my head out, it's like, oh no, people are just chatting with ChatGPT and, asking it like medical advice or, maybe sending like I asked my sister, she works at a school and, she's like an administrator. And I was like, oh, do you use AI? And she's like, oh yeah, we do. We use it to write emails. And she was super excited about it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, cool. It's like,
All right.
it's like taking her 3, 4, 5 years maybe from kind of ChatGPT's ability to write emails to like be excited about that. And I think that's normal. So when new technology kind of is confronted to, to the workplace with, the MSP's involvement. Um, you know, is it gonna happen? Like, is AI gonna disrupt anything? Are they gonna have to be the leader in AI? For a certain set of companies, for sure, 10%, 20%, over the next 10 years, probably 50%, 75%, over the next 20 to 30 years, probably 100%, you know, um, but it's, over that time, it's going to look different. AI, is going to be embedded into our software in a way where we don't actually call it AI anymore. It's just software. Um, you know, so
It'll be as charming as when, an older person still says the World Wide Web. It just,
sure. Or yeah.
it's like, well, you
Yeah.
don't say AI out loud anymore. It just is. Right.
It's exactly right. Or,
Okay.
like, people used to get super proud about having their own email server. Like, that was a big deal at one point. We host our own email. Now it's like, you know, Gmail, Microsoft, whatever, it's just a thing, you know?
Yes.
More people probably don't want email at this point than, you know,
Right.
than wanna be proud about having an email address or being able to use email. So yeah, I'm not gonna, like, fade AI in any way. I think, it's a force multiplier. It's definitely here to stay. I think it's changing every day. I mean, the way I use it, vibe coding and kind of workflow, um, production, it's like, the world is 1,000% different from even 6 months ago, you know? So what does that mean to an MSP? How do they get involved? What do their clients really need? What can they actually deliver? All that stuff. I think it's a good thing to think about, and I think the people that think about it the right way, are gonna capitalize it, and it's another business line that can increase, the exposure that they have to their clients and then potentially get new clients. Um, but like existential threat to the MSP, um, I don't see that. I just
I'm thinking about, some transitions that have happened in technology in my 20 years. And whatever they are, every MSP can name those, whether it's cloud, whether it's the introduction of the managed services model, whether it's different RMMs, RPAs. I've always had this kind of, benefit or disadvantage of I don't understand the technology. All I can do is kind of observe it from my role in the world and say, okay, I get it. Now let's figure out how to monetize it profitably. Okay. This AI component, it's like, oh, I can actually engage at whatever level I choose to engage at with it. So I'm matching most of my clients with we're using it similarly. You haven't raced ahead of me yet as an MSP. So I keep feeling this low grade anxiousness on behalf of my clients and for myself, thinking you've got to start asking your clients questions. You've got to start answering the question of what you're going to be doing with it. And I think about all the things that inform that for me. One, I get to participate in the technology. And second, I think of my own age and I think of the age of the owner. And so I'm kind of putting these artificial um, pressures on the client to figure out what they're going to do. I don't like that when I take that step back. But let me ask you, do we feel like these MSPs have to have an answer really fast? Because I'm not sure, right? Because you've lived the other side of that technology evolution. And is it okay to be in at the back end of this S curve, or are you gonna get left behind so quickly? This just feels different, but I think it only looks different to me because I get to participate in this technology.
no, that's it right there. So, you're hitting it on the head. The ability for anyone in the world to have access to the same tool set for free or near free, is really the differentiating factor of this technology over most other technologies we've experienced. It's similar to like, and most MSPs will remember this, but like, you know, when smartphones started coming on the market, and it was always the CEO, right? Maybe it was because the price of these things, or whatever. You just had like the CEO that just thought that it was the coolest thing to be able to have their email, or ability to message people. I mean, I'm dating myself, but there was a point in life where we didn't have the ability to communicate outside of work other than making a phone call. Um, you can argue more people used email before they used text on their phone, in America at least. Um, but remembering the days where we would get these CEOs that would get these Blackberries, or, God, they had 100 different devices that, the technology was so brutal. Like, you'd have these apps installed on the computer. Maybe a server like a BlackBerry server would exist that you can kind of connect multiple Blackberries to and get a better system going. But this reminds me a lot of that, where there's this like burgeoning technology that, people want and they have access to. So they just go to the Verizon store and buy this brand new thing you've never even heard of, because it's like the latest model of some, T-Mobile kind of branded device, and then you got to figure it out. And so what you find is the client was pushing the technology on you as the MSP. So this is that times 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, million. Because it's one thing to have a device that has email on it, and then understanding like, okay, what do I have to do to secure this thing? What if they lose it? I don't even understand how it works. What if it stops, sending an email in the middle of the night, whatever, right? Like that's one problem that we used to have to overcome. Now, what we're doing is basically giving everyone the same power, down to every single user, and trying to gate that power, of AI, right? So, it's one thing to chat with the AI. It's another thing to copy, data into it, financials or proprietary information. How do you deal with that? So I think what you're looking at is like, how do we empower the MSP to go out and provide a new business line and new opportunities to the MSP? That's one aspect of it. That's the part I would fade more, because the adoption of true, valuable AI usage, just I've just asked too many, anecdotally, I just asked too many people, and the responses I get are, I'm sending emails, I'm using it as like a Google replacement. But that's not because the limitation of the technology, that's the limitation of the user. So then you introduce, people that actually wanna use it for, more advanced reasons, and the ability to just copy, full directories into Claude and have it scan the whole thing and build an app, or, create some kind of API call to some other system to, like, push the data to. That's the part that the MSP should be concerned about, and I think
Um,
that's the part that they mostly are concerned about. And when we ask the MSPs, like, "Hey, what do you think about AI?" It's usually him and haw about, like, the actual technology until they get to the security aspect of it, and then they're, like, pretty much deer in headlight, and the answer is essentially, "Don't use it." So, and I
right.
don't blame them. Like that's what I would be saying too. The problem is you have almost zero ability to gatekeep that, because it's ubiquitous. It's on your phone, it's on your home computer, it's all the same thing. It's the cloud plus the brain in the back. So it's like you can't really stop them from trying to use it. And the ability to just copy and paste data into it, I mean, it's just getting better and better, to the point where there's almost no limit to what the systems can, utilize now. So that's the true opportunity that's being forced upon them, is how do I secure my clients' data against not only like, these big hyperscalers, frontier models, potentially stealing, training, and using their data, but also, any kind of like code injection or prompt injection that's actually going to send that, data somewhere that, neither party knows about. So there is a big security risk with all of this technology that the MSP has to be aware of.
Yeah, and okay, so if we take, the role that the client might be, positioning themselves at with the MSP, saying, "I'm now coming to you and I want answers," and I've got curiosity. The MSP's role of we have lots of curiosity and we want to play along, or hey, we're going to try to just kind of hold you off for now, whatever that role is. If we think about the decision points that are two folks that we're thinking about right now, and probably many more MSPs, it's that sell, scale what we're doing, or pivot, that kind of reinvent. What's your take? Do you
Yeah.
think this moment of time with the technology that might be coming from our clients saying, "I wanna do something," does that force a decision sooner on that sell, scale, pivot decision tree?
Let me answer this in two ways, right? So let me take it from a perspective of purely just looking at the opportunities. So when I was running my MSP and the business that we run today, it's like I never consider myself a good salesperson. Like if I have high conviction in something, or if the opportunity is given to me, like people are asking for something, I feel like I can speak clearly about something enough to where I can provide value and then potentially, engage with the customer through some kind of sales. So I always love the opportunities that were forced onto the client, right? Like I love that. So like, an example would be, they have a compliance issue where their vendors are coming to them saying, "Hey, you need to be SOX compliant or some kind of HIPAA compliance." It's like, "Oh, now I don't have to actually sell them on it. They're actually asking me, 'Hey, I need this thing for my business.'" So I love that. So when I look at the opportunity with AI or any kind of emerging technology that, like we talked about before with the iPhones or, the smartphones coming out, it's like they would come to me and say, "Hey, I want this thing. Can you implement it into the company?" It's like, yes, like that's 50, 60, 75% of the problem is figuring out like if the client will say yes to something. So when they come to you with the opportunity, I mean, every business should be looking at that as like a gold mine. Right. And if you really look at it objectively, kind of like where the economy is going with all this, I think they said something along the lines of 680, $700 billion. And you really think about that number of investment in AI infrastructure um, in 2025. I mean, almost $1 trillion of energy has been pushed into this kind of thing, and it's just bursting out of the seams and everyone's adopting it and everyone's at least got an account on one of these things. So the opportunity of anyone looking at the landscape and saying, "Hey, do I want to scale my business? Does AI provide a threat or an opportunity?" I think it provides both. And actually we get paid to secure against the threat and produce the technology to scale those businesses. So it's a double opportunity there. So if I'm thinking about like, hey, what do I want to do with my business as an MSP in 2026? If I have those opportunities, if I have uh, those options that you put on the table, it's like, well, I think sky's the limit as far as like what's out there, especially because of the AI kind of wave that's hitting right now, and we're in the early stages. So I like looking at that and saying, "Hey, yeah, there's threats out there, but there's also opportunities to go after." I'm going to stay in the game and ride this wave. It's probably going to last another 5, 10 years at least. Whatever my time scale is, it's probably going to be there. So for the younger guys, yeah, it's going to be here in 30, 40 years. There's probably going to be other things for the older guys that are looking to potentially exit at this point. Yeah, there's still massive opportunity. So you don't
Well,
need to leave today.
there, I think for me, I'm hearing a really interesting answer in there. It's that acknowledgement that AI is a threat and an opportunity. So and for you using the BlackBerry server analogies, they're asking for it. Yes, I'll figure out how to do it, but yes, we'll do it. There's a point in time with every business owner that they learn to say no to things, and whether they learn that early or late, it kind of matters. But if I'm looking at my sell, scale, or pivot, if I don't feel like I can answer the call, if I don't feel like I want to answer the call, if I keep telling my clients AI is too dangerous yet, don't we got to worry about your data and just kind of push them off, does that give me some signal that I should be thinking about exiting? Or is that not big enough yet to push me to, if I'm not willing to say yes, I should just get out while my valuation is a little more known today than it will be in 5 years? Or is it just another thing? And if I say no and I don't answer the call, I'm still going to be okay for another 5, 10 years.
I think it depends. I think, if the other parts of my answer is really kind of, regardless of what those, options are, they should all reflect back to, well, what are you trying to do anyway? Like what's actually your plan, right? Have you really, gone through and said, hey, I want my business to look like this in, 5 years. And again, back to the earlier part of the conversation, it's like anecdotally, right? Like we're not seeing every client, or every MSP out there, but we are seeing a lot of them. And what we find is like they haven't answered that question yet. So, and we love to work on these real difficult, unsure problems, right? We love to pontificate on, hey, where's the world going? What should I do with this new technology? How do I navigate this unknown kind of space that's coming up i- in this really perverse way? Because it's like totally doesn't matter, you know? Like, it's like we can't tell the future. And honestly, as an MSP, like you're lucky if you even get enough time to raise your head up and kind of look around in a real serious way, up until a certain point. Some guys have figured it out. Some haven't, some will never. But what all MSPs and small businesses and any business really could do is really look internally first and say, okay, what am I trying to get accomplished here? Do I know my business? Do I know my financials? Do I have a plan of execution? What are my processes to execute on those plans? Um, and it's sad to say that it's just, the ones that are not capable today of answering those bigger questions about like what the world needs to look like or could look like and solving that real difficult problem, um, are generally the ones that haven't answered the question for their own business. Is like, who am I? Where am I going? How am I going to get there? And do I have the systems in place to achieve that?
Yes.
And regardless of what option you choose, pivot, scale, or exit, you still need to answer those questions. So if we ask you, what's your service department gross profit, and you're at best saying, "Hey, let me get back to you. I've got that number." At
Right.
worst, you're still trying to figure out what net profit versus gross profit is, you know, and then at the most extreme, you still haven't made any money in your business, so profit doesn't even matter.
Right.
Um, but more on a more serious note, it's like, we wanna work on the super hard problems without getting the basics done, and I think that's just human nature. In a real weird way. We don't want to clean up our room, but we're willing to like, say what the president's doing is wrong. It's like, it's like
Yes.
we don't want to look at our own stuff, right? We don't want to look at that bank account because we just know it's not good, you know? It's just so normal. So, I don't know if this answers your question, but what I would say is, regardless of what you want to do, whether you want to sell, scale, or pivot, if you can't answer where you're supposed to be in a year, both from a revenue, both by a client size, both by a, technology stack, if you can't answer whether or not your dispatcher is doing a good job based on a certain amount of metrics, if you can't answer, how much time was entered into your system last month by your technicians, if you can't answer what your utilization is based on kind of your payroll and what your billable hours are, like, you have no business trying to figure out, should I pivot? Should I sell? Should I scale? Like, you just don't have any business because, like, you're gonna have to answer those. In all 3 of those, situations, it's like, you don't just get to choose to scale or pivot, and you definitely don't get to choose to sell, because someone's gonna ask you those questions.
We'll be right back with more, but first, here's a quick message from Baring McKinley.
Most MSPs are constantly busy, chasing tickets, projects, and fires. But without structure, it's hard to know if the business is really improving. Vision from Baring McKinley is the system that helps you work on your business, not just in it. It connects leadership strategy with daily execution. Vision aligns people, process, and performance, creating clarity and rhythm from goals to results. And the Vision app brings that structure to life, helping you create policies, track goals, review KPIs, and collaborate with your BMK consultant all in one place. Behind it all, Jetson AI, your assistant inside Vision, helps you find answers, generate insights, and take action faster. With Vision, you gain visibility, accountability, and measurable growth. You're not guessing, you're improving. Vision, Jetson, and the Vision app, your path from strategy to results. Start transforming your business today.
All right, let's get back to the conversation.
Yes. No, that's yeah, I keep thinking about that word threat. And it's like, okay, we're all used to doing a SWOT analysis, and opportunities and threats are very correlated. Threat to what? What's the threat? Is just this weird threat that it might rain? Okay, well, who cares? You don't even know if you have an umbrella, if you're inside or if you're outside, if you like the rain or don't like the rain. The threat should be interpreted as, this is a threat to my plan. And if I don't have a plan, then everything's a threat and everything's an opportunity. And like you said, trying to ask these big questions about where the global economic, status is, or anything, what AI is going to do. It's like, dude, who cares? You're just existing. Right. So we've got to make that plan, that strategic plan of, who are we? How do we perform? Most important of all, it is, what do you want? So I think there's kind of this question, is a bit of a false question that I've raised of, you know, should they sell, scale, or pivot? I don't know. What does their plan tell them? Right. Do you think there's a big enough threat to your plan that you won't be able to get to your $5 million valuation in another 63 months left in the plan? If we look at these opportunities and threats, it's, how do they impact your plan? Can you get to the same place? Let's not worry about what PE is doing. Let's not worry about valuations. Let's worry about, do you have a great plan in place? Then measure the degrees difference that we might need to adjust for when we can really evaluate the threats and opportunities.
Yeah, I think that's right, and, I don't think anyone wants to hear that. I don't think anyone wants to hear how simple it is to just stick to the basics. And there's plenty of people out there telling you, you know, I don't know how many coaches there are in the world at this point from a business standpoint, but it seems like everyone's a coach now, and good for them. Honestly, I think that there should be many coaches. We used to call them mentors, right? Like the, it's like I don't think you have to, be controlling a massive part of the population in order to kind of be a coach or whatever. But the reality is, like, if your coach not has not told you in the last week, hey, be consistent, stay disciplined, work the plan, work on the basics. Like, if they're not telling you that, like, and you're not inherently doing that work, or thinking of the work in that way, um, I think you're just missing it. We want it to be so much harder than it is. Um, and for sure tackle those hard things when you need to, but be grounded in the basics. Be grounded in the financials and the operations in a way where, look, we want those to be as simple as possible, right? Like, you don't want that to be a disaster. You don't want that to be impossible. You don't want to have to defer to someone else every time there's a financial question as a business owner, um, that you don't understand how to read a P&L or understand what your balance sheet is trying to tell you, or understand how your business actually makes money. You do not want to delegate all of that knowledge to someone else, um, regardless of the size. And what you'll find, I was listening to a podcast yesterday. It's like, they're trying to dissect why Elon is such a amazing operator, and love him or hate him, it's undeniable, like what he's doing with SpaceX and XAI and Tesla, and you know all the boring company, all these things, right? Like, he knows how to run businesses. And they're breaking it down, and what they said was like, yeah, at the root of it, like, he double majored in economics and engineering, or
Oh,
physics, I
wow.
guess. So, um think about that. Like, if you understand your product well enough to be in the room with the engineers, and you understand the financials enough to be in the room with the CFO, like, that's probably where you want to be as a business owner.
Yeah, as we, it seems like any more over the last few years, anytime I have any sort of conversation with anyone around the business, this movie reel just plays in my head, and different faces and names just keep playing in that reel, like, oh, this relates to that person or that person. Right now, the movie reel is probably the last 7, 8 prospects that I've spoken with about their business, and do they want to become a vision client or not. And what you said is like, that's boring. The strategic plan, that's not sexy, that's not fun, it's the foundations. But we'd rather spend our time thinking about, what how do I solve this problem that I haven't really formally addressed in my own plan. And I think of some of these prospects that I've met, and dude, the classic for me is someone calls and says, "Hey, can you connect my ConnectWise to my QBO?" And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." And for, 15 of the last 20 years, it's my job is to tell you that that's a symptom, right? Not the problem, and then explore the problem and see if you'll come along on that ride with me. And so now we're getting more people saying, some more mature things like, they've heard service department gross profit, they've heard our thoughts on dispatch, and they want to talk about that. And now, when I have those conversations, I'm trying to drag them into the strategic planning conversation. And the resistance is high, Gary. It's amazing, and it's once you understand something, like I'll presuppose that I understand strategic planning, I understand why it's so valuable. Once you understand it, it's almost hard not to get frustrated with that prospect, to say, "Dude, just listen to me. Your dispatch doesn't matter, right? What matters is, how are these margins impacting your ability to get to where you wanna be, and is dispatch the right solution?" Turns out it is almost all the time, but the real problem that you're facing is you don't know why you want dispatch. You don't know why you want AI. You don't know why. You just know it. You're right that you need it, but you still have to understand why. So it is interesting to see prospects that we talk to that are really resistant of having that conversation with us, all the way up, our client chain, to people that don't want to talk to me about anything other than their plan. Like, I'll hear them talk about a topic, and I'll be like, "Oh, hey, and here, these are some thoughts on this." They're like, "Oh, okay, cool, but or do I have the right initiatives for meeting my goal this quarter?" It's like, Okay, you're right. That's where we should talk." Um, and when I think about these folks that are resistant to having a strategic conversation with us, I just wish I could be a fly on the wall to hear the other conversations they're having, because I'm betting it would be a lot of uncertainty around, where they're going and where they should go in terms of the adoption of this technology opportunity in front of them. It yeah, it just kind of blows my mind, not because 'cause they're dumb or wrong, but just because, oh, my mind has really gotten into this place where I can see clearly you've gotta have that plan.
Yeah, I think people, give I'm gonna give people credit and grace here. It's like, if you open up X and just, if you've created a theme around AI, for example, it's like that's all you get, and you get inundated with it all day long. You think the whole world is revolving around what Cloud Code is going to do tomorrow. And, if your clients are also only calling you about technical issues, like that's all you're thinking about, right? And by the way, like that's the business you're in. The so so th the owner or the executive team at an MSP, that's what they're confronted with. So they're trying to solve that problem. Those are hard problems to solve, so it does take a lot of energy. Um, so when we try to transition an owner to thinking less tactically and more strategically, generally the tactics are purely like how I'm delivering services, right? And really at like the direct level of the client, like what am I selling them? How much should I charge them? All these things, which, are good questions, and do matter. Um, but it's really out on the edge. It's really kind of like cause and effect of like, hey, if I quote them this, like, will they say yes? Like, is that competitive in the market? Like that's what we hear a lot. It's like they're way out there. I talked to my peer group and they said to use this software or this tool. It's like so far out on the edge that um and it matters, but like they haven't really brought it all the way back to, how does this affect my, agreement gross profit if I introduce this new software? Why do I care about that? Like how do I account for my technician's time when I'm thinking about delivering this type of service? And when the person is confronted with those kind of questions and they don't have the financial background to understand what they're actually looking at, the base I'm calling them the basics. I'm not saying they're basic because they're quote unquote basic easy. I'm saying they're the basics because like that's what all businesses need. So when they don't have the fundamentals on the financials and they don't have command of kind of what their profitability margins should look like, in various formats, and they're only trying to look at the quote unquote symptom here, right? Like tool or no tool, you know, QuickBooks connected to ConnectWise or not. Like these are not actually that important, right? Like they are answers to what is important. And what is important is, the core things about the business, how to keep it running properly from inside, right? Like inside the financials. Are we profitable enough to hire the next person?
Yeah.
Are we on the growth trajectory plus profit to demand, the multiple of EBITDA that buyers will pay? Right? That's not in what tools I'm using and what kind of clients, love me and don't love like that. It's so far down the path of what a buyer actually cares about. Um, you know, it's like, what they want to see is strong margins, good growth, operational excellence, which typically includes policies and processes that are developed. Like, have you asked yourself, do we have all those?
Right.
How do you even know? How do you even know to ask yourself if you don't?
Right. Well, and there we have it. When I think of these two, folks that we're currently talking to, and we think about that kind of sell it now, scale up, or pivot, you're going to have to answer the question like, okay, if I sell, do I have clean numbers? Can somebody else understand the story of my business? If I choose to scale and keep getting after it, hire that sales team, it's like, do you have the operational metrics in place? Do you know what the right metrics are? And are you reporting on those so you can see what scale will actually look like? And then if we decide to pivot and to get into, another area deeper into cybersecurity, deeper into AI and automation, do you understand where the value is created? And turns out that all of those are answered in your strategic plan. You can't build a strategic plan without knowing your metrics and your numbers, and you've chosen those initiatives based on where you believe the value is created for your clients and internally. So all the roads just keep leading back to, do you have this plan in place? And then once you have that plan in place, congratulations, that's awesome. Can you execute on it? I think that's where we are with a lot of the clients right now, Gary, is they do this tremendous effort to make the plan. And when I say tremendous, it's I just I'm in awe of how much work people put into these things with us and on their own. But then it's like, can I have my weekly accountability? Can I do can I tie those action items to the goals? Can I really track not just what we intended to do, but can I have the discipline to execute? So it's whatever you're faced with, where does it fit into your plan? And once you kind of say, okay, I'm going to stop trying to face all these issues, let me just make my plan. Can I actually execute on it? Does
Yes,
that sound right to you?
absolutely. Execution's everything. Because, most won't have a plan, some will, most won't execute, some will. Those are the ones that are beating you on every opportunity. Those are the ones that are exiting at 8 to 12x EBITDA. Those are the ones that seemingly never have a bad month, year, you know,
Right.
because they're just grounded in execution as the primary kind of catalyst for their business. And execution does not mean I show up to work every day and take care of things. Like, that's not actually what it means. In fact, if you are, as a business owner or leader, showing up to work every day, you're probably missing an opportunity to take some time off to really think about what you're trying to execute on. Um, there's stories about this. Bill Gates used to take 2 weeks off a year and read hundreds of books or something crazy on his time off to get prepared for the next year. You hear about these stories about these companies, seemingly having some crazy budget to take their company out to you know Hawaii for a company retreat to just work on, their plan and how they're going to execute for the next year or quarter or whatever. Like, these seem like, when you're small, these seem like a luxury and maybe a waste of money or whatever. But like, what you start to identify once you're kind of mature enough to understand what the business actually needs is, you need that downtime to put together that plan, to put together the steps to execute that plan, and then to, at least quarterly, really check back in with it and say, hey, are we on track? Did we do what we said we were going to do? Um, does what we said make sense? That's another one. Just a prime example is like, we did this. So we went into a room, spent a couple days coming up with the plan, and it felt good at the time. Everyone was jacked up. We thought, yeah, this is going to be really great. We've got all these new initiatives. And the whole time I was thinking, man, half of these are really good. The other half of these seem like there's something that we would like to do, but just based on the history of knowing all of us, I'm like, there's no way we're doing these. And what those things, and by the way, we didn't, but at least for now, but what those things end up being, this is the trap of trying to be strategic without really having the muscle memory and understanding of like what that really means, is we don't know how to make a plan. What we think a plan or strategy should be is like, we need to do new things in the business outside of our normal job because it's a new thing we're doing. It's a new, like, the planning session is like a new way of running your business, if you're new at it. So you don't think of it as something that, how do I want to say this? You can get confused on what you're supposed to be planning for. And what happens is all these new ideas and initiatives creep in because everyone's like, oh, what if we did this? Oh, yeah. And then, if we do that, then this will happen. And then we'll get to this point in the future. And you, by and large, forget about the core business and what you actually do, right? Like when you show up every day, what do? You call clients, you fix their computer, enter your time, maybe you do some sales meetings, whatever your job function is at an MSP. What are those things? And do you think that those things will A, still need to be done when you're done with your plan? And B, um, are they being done in a way that is effective? So if A is true, like you will still need to do those, well, that should be the core of your plan. Because you're not going to come in tomorrow and do something completely different every day, right? You're going to do the same thing. You just need to be more effective at it. So instead of just coming in and doing that work, you're going to set some goals for what that work's supposed to look like, right? So this is the real key thing to the strategy is like, hey, like let's solve the problem of the business. And usually when you think about the basics is like, no, we're an MSP that does MSP style work. But because we've never planned before, we don't really have any goals. We don't really have any initiative. And the initiative doesn't need to be some like new business line. It's just, hey, we're going to make sure that no tickets older than 7 days for this quarter. Like it seems like, oh, why would you do that? Like we're trying to do that. It's like, yeah, if you're not doing it, then you need an initiative to do it. And if you did it, what would that do to your business?
That's
So
right.
often we already know what the right thing to do is. We just don't have the plan to tell us what it is and to measure against that. So
Yes.
anyone sitting out there saying, hey, plans are stupid. Okay, well, I've got news for you. But the ones that are actually struggling with how do I devise a plan? How do I create it? How do I execute on it? Just keep it real simple. Like what works today? What do you like to do? Can you scale that? What are the guardrails in place to make sure that that continues to work the right way? And then you build the goals around that, and then you delegate those out to owners of the business that can, make sure that they're accountable for it. And it really just is that simple. And then just the consistency of following through, meaning weekly, monthly, or quarterly, depending on the cadence that you choose, will help you execute on that.
Yeah. Oh, that's huge. I obviously sit in and lead a lot of these building these plans, and I think of, when I'm helping, the client determine these strategic initiatives, it's like, oh man, I can fall into that trap and dream bigger and what's additive to this that we're not doing that we need to start doing. But, just even that simple example of like, hey, an initiative is, no tickets over 7 days. Cool. What's the math? What's the data tell us? Right? What do the financials tell us? Because a lot of times we're just making these like six-figure decisions on gut feel instead of data. And frankly, as you think about what else we can do with our clients, if you can't run your business on data, you can't sell advisory on data. If you're running your business without a lot of process, how are you going to have the wherewithal to help your clients determine how to processize their business and thus automate things within their business? So, yeah, great reminder, great call out.
That's right. And just kind of leave that topic, I'm obviously very passionate about it, but it kind of goes back to the, what directions do we want to take our company? Do we want to exit? Do we want to scale? Do we want to pivot? The same thing kind of when you think about your plan and think about your business kind of more microscopic, right? Like maybe it's like, a 6 month, a year kind of thing. And, you haven't chose one of those three options. You're just kind of like, I need to just work on my business for a little bit. Keeping it simple and saying, hey, it would be great to get to $1 million this year, 2 million, 10 million, whatever that number is that you're targeting. Just reflect on where you're at. Like, let's say you're at like 500 grand, right? Maybe you got a couple of guys working for you. That $1 million kind of target, man, you really want that. And that's cool. And maybe you even put that on your plan. But that target means very little if you don't execute on whatever you're trying to get accomplished, right? Like, so what I like to see is more realistic numbers. Maybe it's just, hey, I want to do 500,000 again, but I want these things in place by the end of the year. I'm willing to like forego growth because I want to build kind of my fortress a little bit stronger, right? And doing that work, right? Like executing on a plan that actually moves the ball forward. It creates these processes and policies that you can follow. You integrate whatever tools that need to support that. You're looking at your numbers, you're working with your coach or mentor. Just doing that work, I can almost guarantee you're going to be in excess of that 500,000 that were doing last year. Just doing that. Right? So, like, because you're doing the basics, because you're getting to the root of what mostly matters in a business, because you're learning about your financials, because you're working on what matters, your business will grow.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I always say, hey, just fix your time entry problem, and you're going to see a 10 to 15% increase in revenue. Unexplainably, it's just like who knows which of the 50 reasons why, but you just sometimes it's just focusing on the right thing, or anything. Sometimes we see these improvements. Oh, good, Gary. Well, I think we've taken an interesting kind of line through here of, thinking of these two folks, thinking about, the decision tree they're looking at. Now, I know both of these clients, and both of them have, modest, strategic plans. They're getting better. They're still early in that journey. I don't think what we've built so far is what I'm imagining they would need for this question to be answered much easier. So I think that's my reminder to go back to them and say, let's really anchor down and let's tighten these strategic plans, and let's see what the plan tells us we should do. Hey, let's once the plan is kind of fact based and just observational and a little aspirational, what does the pivot look like? What does the sell look like? What does the scale look like? And then you get to start measuring it with how much energy do you have? How much curiosity do you have? How much upside do we see if you expend that extra energy? But the plan really becomes the starting point of the conversation.
Yeah, I would agree.
Good. All right, Gary. Well, good. This is a fun way to spend a little bit of time on a Saturday morning. Um, Everyone else, thanks for joining us. And if you got ideas, thoughts, where you think we nailed it, where you think we missed the mark, or you want to share your story, leave some comments, give us a call, shoot us an email. We love hearing from you. But I think that's it for today, Gary. Bye.